So this is our third video with my friends that I've roped in. It's the annual Girls Weekend, and one of the things we're trying to do is I get a lot of requests from women who wish they had this, and I'm not gonna lie, it's not like you can just go randomly pick people and pull this off quickly and have this amazing experience, but we've been doing this for 13 or 14 years, and we've learned a lot, and we love our Girls Weekend. So the last two videos were about how we each kind of what we face to come here, the tips and strategies we have to like make it possible with our budget, our relationships, our kids, our careers, and all that kind of stuff. But now we want to switch and talk about what we do when we're all together. So I think this one is probably the ones that gets me most excited, because sometimes when we think of like a girls' getaway, we put so much focus on the location, like we're going to Vegas, or like, and there's so much attention to all the activities, like seeing that new location, and I think that's fun, but this isn't about, for us, it's not about just traveling. It's not just going and like just seeing a new place. Like we actually put very little emphasis on where we are. We basically, the way we pick a location, honestly, is like, does anyone have access to a free house? Start there. Like we really want to make this, our goal is to make our time together the focus. And so we don't really care about the house. We don't care if somebody has to sleep on the couch. We don't care if like it's in Timbuktu. Like the number one goal is like, where can we all be together and spend time together? And that's been our focus. And so some years that means we're just in a lodge in a mountain somewhere, and we might go for a walk, and that's all we might do for the fun activity, right? And other years we're like in Orange County, and there's like a spa there, and we're like, hey, let's go do the spa. And so there are some years where we do fun stuff and go out or whatever, but we've never wanted to be so busy doing things that we aren't like just in the house, waking up, being lazy, having tons of conversation. So for me, I feel like with this video, and I kind of want to have each of my girlfriends share something that they love about our weekend together, but I would just start with like just the idea that our focus is on our time together, and like what that looks like and what we each appreciate about that, I think is really important, because I feel like a lot of girls' weekends end up being very location focused and way more worried about eating out at the nice restaurants, and like where are the best restaurants and what are the activities and like what can we do there, and we never have gone to see a movie together. I mean, anything that we're not getting to talk or connect, have we?
Yeah, Palm Springs, we saw Brokeback Mountain.
Oh, well, that was a long time ago.
And you don't technically count that one. That's the 14th one.
I do count it. And that was when we were all meeting regularly together, so it wasn't like an annual get together, but that was our first get together. All right, 14.
Very rare. But we didn't know what we were doing, and so we've never watched the movie since.
Okay, so what's cool about that though is we were seeing each other weekly during that time. So watching a movie together, I think is a very different experience, and we got to talk about it afterwards. Yeah. But when we have these precious 3 days together, we're not doing any activity that we're not like engaging, interacting, and being really available. Like our activities are based on us being able to talk and connect and stuff. So anyway, I just think what I would set up first for me is just that this is very based on what can we do to get everybody there in the cheapest way possible, in the fastest way possible, so that we can get there and just have our time together, and that's our focus. And once we nail that down, then we're like, okay, is there anything fun to do in the area that we want to get dressed up and go out and do? But we really do focus on picking the location. To me, that part, just that we're all together, is my favorite part. All right, Karen, and then Jaylene, and then Krista, and then Val.
So one thing that I look forward to and that I think is really important is this time is restorative. I mean, we're all incredibly busy women with a lot of stuff going on that we're usually generating at home ourselves, right? So bottom line is that, we make sure that we have a lot of downtime, and we're in our jammies. We're just dressed up for you guys right now. I mean,
this is as dressed up as it gets.
This is it. So bottom line is that we take our time, and we're very gracious with each other in terms of who wakes up at what point, and kind of very, there is a structure, but it's that we know that we're all going to have meals together, and there's time in between to talk and chat and things like that. I love our meals together because usually it's just now organic, but initially I think we had an organization to, okay, whoever's kind of being the host or the two hostesses would kind of plan our very, very loose meals. A lot of times we're buying, just supplies to be able to like make a breakfast and a lunch out of some of the similar stuff.
Easy as the rule.
Nourishing, comforting, but a lot of times respecting, like there have been seasons where I was on some crazy diet, right? There have been seasons where we have people who are vegetarian and people who are not. We have to really, just kind of, but now it's not hard. You're right. After 14 or 13 years, it's like we all kind of respect each other's food preferences, and always, have options for people, but nothing super expensive. And
we usually only go out once, like the goal is to save money. So a lot of times it's just kind of grazing and just enjoying each other's company. And so that's my favorite thing, is that we also kind of clean up together, we kind of make meals together, we support the person who's doing the work, and make it just easy. So so it doesn't have to be, like you said, 5-star restaurant every night, and like breakfast
who can make the better pasta, because this one's going to be the best. It really is just like,
our goal is to not be in the kitchen slaving away, but if we're all in there kind of helping make it happen, that's part of our bond. That's good. Those who eat together stay together. But
it's been nice.
Any girls' weekend should have food brought up as one of the and we always have a good mix of there's enough something healthy, and then there's a lot of unhealthy. But I love that we kind of do both, because you go home nourished. Nourished.
Yeah, you really feel like you've been fed in multiple different ways. And I mean, like I said, people show up with different things, but there's enough for everybody to kind of find what they're going to eat all day, even if it's only cut apples. Or
and I
can
feel
of beans.
like it's changed with our age too. When we were, we went. I feel like we used to eat less healthfully, and we've grown to realize that we all feel better.
I don't know if you saw the table last night. I was thinking down the other direction.
That's because she let us all buy our own chips.
That's because I let them all into the store yesterday.
That was
I
crazy.
should have gotten it on my own.
Generally, only one person buys, and this time it was free for alls. Free for alls.
But actually, having said that, by all of us going into the store, we discovered that we actually don't know certain things about us. And I was shocked when you said, "You like barbecue chips, Jaylene?" Because I'm like, that's the only kind of chip I like. And it's funny that after, 15 years of knowing each other.
I know all the secrets of your life, but I don't know what chips. I know. That's my new goal, is to be able to know those things about you. That's fun. It was bonding. Yeah. What do you love about what makes our time meaningful together?
So I think it's important to have maybe kind of an integral reason for getting together. And I don't think it needs to be the same for every group, but I think if there's maybe a goal in mind, so maybe the goal is just simply to come and catch up, or maybe the goal is simply to just come and share deep secrets or cry on each other's shoulder, but something, because it will be the reason I think that you keep coming back, because I do think that a different girls group that wanted this to happen, that invited me to be part of it, there wasn't a common goal for everyone to want to go back the next year. And again, that's a loose goal. I'm not trying to say it needs to be fixed. And I would say that our goal is actually a little bit on the serious side. I think that our goal is there's always a bit of a self-help component that I actually love. And I love that we have you to facilitate it, because you have such a background in this area, and you can really walk us through what we need to be the best version of ourselves. And what I love is that though you might facilitate that, everybody has input that is so valuable. And so it's not like you're doing everything for us. It's that maybe you bring up a question, and then we get to hear the wisdom of everybody else. And I know that for me personally, I have had many successes in my life because I have come open to hearing things that are harder to hear, some constructive feedback. I have been open to changing certain things, but because of the way we do it, and the way we happen to do it is we journal. So we can look back on our journaling. And I've said this more than once, where what has really been interesting to me is that I don't see a whole lot of growth in my life from year to year. I see it every 2 years. I'm a slow grower, but I am growing. And I contend that one of the reasons why I have had so much success in my professional life is that I've been able to come here and just feel like I'm dying, and you guys have helped me work through it. And I will say my husband, did as well, so I don't want to put it all on this group, but for me, the most important thing is that component, and everything else falls into place. I wouldn't want to come here just for that component and not catch up and not have the fun part of going out and doing something or not eating or whatever. But for me, if it didn't have that component of, I wonder what I wrote last year to see where I am now. For me, that's one of the things that really is important to me and keeps me coming back.
So I heard you saying two things. One is the personal growth thing, which I think, I tend to be somebody who is reading a lot and learning a lot about that, but you wouldn't need me at the group, because it's easily I mean, I guess we've always had a personal growth like passion collectively, but I feel like it started one year where I just mentioned I'd taken some inventory, and then you guys were like, oh, we should take that inventory, and everybody went on their computers and took this inventory. It could be as easy as like the 5 love languages book, and it's like what it does is just, it doesn't mean anybody has to be like, I'm not coming with an agenda or a teaching, but I think it's cool to be with your friends to be able to say, hey, we should all figure out what our love language is and like learn that about each other. So it's like a personal growth because you're going home now having the language to say, I have words of affirmation, I have acts of service, but then it's also we're learning that about each other, so it's strengthening our friendship when we're together. Because now I'm like, and you're that, and I know I need to remember your birthday because that matters to you, but it probably doesn't matter as much to, it's really cool. Like, so I think it could be as easy as like any inventory out there that just kind of as a fun little quiz even or something that gives you the chance to like learn about
and you
yourself.
develop around it.
Yeah, and so we've changed over the years which inventory, what personal growth system we use and stuff like that. The other thing I love is the journaling piece that you brought up. And so in our case, we each, like logistically, we each do one kind of 5 to 7 questions. This kind of like, I just view it as like a snapshot of life right now, or like kind of looking back on the last year. And we have a folder, and
that is worth a lot of money.
we have these folders. Each of us has this folder, and this
is
Valerie. No, but what you'll see in here is like her journal thing from from this weekend. She did it last night, and then you could look back, and this is her journaling from last year. Of what was her highs and lows from last year? What was she struggling with in the year before?
And you'll notice that there's 14 of them.
And I love that we can look back and be like, oh my gosh, 3 years ago you were going through that. That was like, we didn't think we'd ever recover from that. And like, I think that's where it just is so cool to like, we get to dip into each other's life once a year, but we have this like history that that reminds us where we've grown.
And we do share our findings. And so one year I tend to view life with a lens of fear. And I'm really trying to work on that. And before I understood that about myself, because we hadn't done that one tool that you were mentioning, Krista was able to tell me, because often we do write down our fears or what have you, and Krista was able to point out, Jaylene, have you noticed that none of your fears have ever come true? And I had never noticed that, and it was life changing for her to like point that out. And because even though I do want to grow and be the best I can be, it often takes someone else reflecting what I've written about myself so it's been invaluable.
Yeah, no, that's what probably one of my favorite things is, and I think that's the hard thing about starting a group is you don't have history, so you're not getting that, but you keep going with it, and we can actually say, but remember 4 years ago when and remember, I remember when you were at like this, and like you're struggling with this, but remember, compare that to where you were at. Like, I mean, the history and the like, I remember when is like gold in this group now. Like, that is worth. And then we might not have that for the first few years, but this is like one of those things where the investment and the payoff get like exponentially bigger.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anything? What's jumping out for you, Krista?
Well, that
we take it?
Along. That basically goes along with kind of what has been really valuable to me, and I think especially in the beginning years, because after 13 or 14 years, we're
just gonna all have to decide on a number at the end of this and be like,
we more naturally do some of these things, but I think in the beginning, especially as somebody who tends to sit on the outside of a group or observe more, it was really meaningful to me to have kind of a little bit of a structured sharing, at least during part of our time, because I think it is really easy in a group. I think we've all been in groups where the conversation is centered on one person and the whole evening goes by and you realize you didn't ask any questions about anybody else, and nobody asked any questions about you. And this group has always felt, I mean, while there have been years that have been more focused on my problems or somebody else's problems, just because of what you have going on in your life, it's always felt like whether the problem was big or small, in comparison to other people, that we all were really a valuable part of the group. And I think it's really easy to feel like other people, I mean, especially when you have a speaker on friendship, it's easier to...
But I'm like, you don't need me at your girls' weekend. You can do
I feel like some people have more valuable advice, but I do feel like over the years we all have really learned from each other, and it's and I think probably starting a group, having just, even 5 minutes, we've done 5 minutes of sharing time when we first get together. Let's catch each other up to speed. Especially when some of you, sometimes we get together at different points in the year, one or two of us, or one of us.
Some of us get together. We're traveling or have an event or something.
So I think some of that structure makes it feel just
I agree.
I remember one year we got together and you started us out by saying, let's just all say something that we're proud of ourselves about. And often we're not allowed to do that in the real world, and I remember you had me going first. And I remember just kind of like saying something and, being uncomfortable with, and this is with people that I knew and loved, this wasn't that long ago. This was, 5 years ago. And I remember as people started saying, I was like, oh, well, I've read the Bible through, and then like someone said something, oh, well, I published an article. And like all of a sudden I was able to just jump in and,
you were able to have more permission to feel proud when you heard us be proud.
Yes, but a simple question of what are you proud, like who would have thought that a simple question of what are you proud of yourself for this year for? Would be so touching.
Yeah. I don't know if this fits in here, but I have loved that about this group is that I feel like we celebrate successes for each other, even when we're not in a place of success ourselves, and that's rare.
It's very
because it's
you don't just
really
get to
easy
cry
to
on each other's shoulder.
I think it's easier for most of us actually to talk about our weaknesses and our problem areas, and it's really hard to come to a group and say like, I have a really amazing marriage.
Truly.
When you're going through a divorce or something. I mean,
I love that too.
And not just painting the broad stroke, like my life is perfect, but more specifically being able to share the highs and the lows of that exact same marriage. You know what I mean? Like, and it feels much more like real because you recognize this person is still growing. This relationship is still dynamic, and we have these roads that we're traveling, but I don't feel like we feel alone. Because it's not very often that in our real life we feel like we can show up like that. It's a safe place.
And I think that when I think about like what would be helpful in terms of like structure, to me, I think it could be as loose as, to me, I always feel like energetically, the first night in, it just needs to be it needs to be like us all in one conversation, like, it needs to kind of be us catching up a little bit. And it is a little more organic sometimes now, but I remember in the early days, it would be like, okay, let's just go around the circle and like each of us share like a highlight and a low light right now. And that just helps make sure that we all are like starting to get heard, get seen, ground. And then there's the part of the weekend where there's, we're walking and different conversations are happening and we different. But I remember one year it was really fun. Like, I feel like each of us kind of picked a different life area and it was like, okay, so let's all talk about the highlights and our lowlights of like our sex life. Okay, let's do the highlights and lowlights of our health. How's everyone's health? Like, what are you feeling in your, and it's like everybody just kind of comes up with different random questions at different times. And the questions, like, I'm a fan of sharing questions because otherwise there's things like, otherwise you don't just interrupt conversation and be like, I'm proud of something. Like,
or you do.
Or you can now. But or to be able to sort of like, by the way, I just want to talk about like, my body's feeling good lately. But I think last year we were talking about what does it feel like to be aging right now? Like, where are you feeling it in your, like, and what are you feeling? But I think it's just cool to have a subject that then everybody gets to like weigh in on and share on, or like, and how's everyone's parents doing? Our parents are aging, and like, so over the course of the weekend, I do feel like it's not like it's 9 o'clock, it's time for this sharing question, and it's not like a game, but it's like we really do have the permission to like bring up a subject and then make sure that everybody weighs in on it. So it's not just me wanting to update everybody on my siblings or my parents, but like, now how's it going with all of your stuff, and one year somebody's great with that situation and the next year it's not. But it's like, that's when I think of structure, I think it's is that what you're kind of referring to? It's like we all have a chance to talk about the things that matter.
I also like the difference in weight, if you will, of the questions. Like, some of them can be like, how's your sex life going? But some of them can just be like, how are your parents? And the example that I'm thinking of is there was a time where two of us had parents in a little bit of ailing health, and we heard them and listened to them, and it sucked. And then my mom died, and I didn't think that was going to happen. And by listening to them and hearing them and hearing them share their pain, I just didn't feel alone. And it was off of a question of, how are your parents? Which is something that you could ask actually someone on the street that you haven't seen in 20 years. But we asked it of people who really mean and care a lot. And so I guess I want to make sure that we put out there that though maybe sometimes we go deeper, that's because we've been doing this for 15 years, 16, 20 years now. No, I'm kidding. But no, I don't want to scare people away who have trouble getting vulnerable. Totally. Start out with the how are your parents, or the easier stuff.
Or just once a highlight and low light. Because then it helps. Like you can pick which one you want to share, but at least then you're guaranteed that everybody left at least getting to share something that matters to them.
And then like you were saying, the payoff of getting more and more vulnerable over the years, if you choose to go vulnerable, there's going to be way more payoff.
Because there's a triangle.
I know, this triangle.
There is something like having some structure around sisterhood in the weekend, and it's evolved because I'm kind of a naked person, evolved into us maybe going out into the snow and howling at the moon in our underwear only. But
it was very secluded.
And some of us being more comfortable with that than others, but really the point of that, as I'm getting older and have a daughter too, is just really valuing the beauty of just all of our different bodies, loving ourselves where we're at, whether we're 15 pounds overweight, 20 pounds, 25. Whether we're, 25, in great shape and not in great shape, it's just, there's something beautiful about, that kind of bonding, but that has happened with vulnerability and the fact that we've had this structure of sharing over the years. Then, we may have gone to a spa where you were supposed to get naked, and, the first year, a couple people might have been down, but as
we're not looking at anybody.
Oh my goodness! But you know what? That was actually such a valuable experience, because I will say, I'm not saying that we should be forced into doing something that we're uncomfortable doing.
Yeah, that's not the point of this.
But I do think there's also something to be said about stretching yourself to step into something that you might be slightly uncomfortable with. So I was extremely uncomfortable with getting naked and going to this Korean massage spa. I almost said parlor.
No,
it was not a parlor. It was a spa, and yet
it's not a relaxing one.
And it wasn't. That first time, I would have rather had 1,000 nails in my left eye. Like, it was extremely uncomfortable. But the experience, we all got together and processed it, and you guys listened to me, and you saw my uncomfort, and then you were like, or somehow. The next time it came up, I was like, I'm in! Granted, I didn't realize it was another Korean spa, but I was really proud of myself, and by doing something out of my comfort zone. I would have never done that because I don't have any other friends who would do that with me. And
I don't get naked with my other friends.
So you
guys wouldn't start there.
No.
We've also done painting together.
Yes.
We've done dancing together.
We have.
We've gone to comedy. I mean, it's kind of cool to be able to see each other in a different light. We noticed that some people are actually excellent painters, and some people do their own path. There's a lot. Some people are amazing dancers,
Yeah.
Amazing cooks. I mean, these experiences also, isn't that something that you've heard? I feel like you've said this before. Having those positive experiences bonds you.
Yes, positivity is one of
I know somebody who does that. But anyway, I think it's really cool. So it's not that, I feel like we do take 1 or 2 times to go and do something together that maybe one of us is on the edge, but we stretch a little bit and then we learn a lot.
And it is so much of it organic. Like, I think about the naked thing. It started as a spa that we had to be naked. It's not like we were sitting in a living room and somebody's like, let's get naked.
At 10 a.m. you must get naked. No, it doesn't work.
But then it became this joke where I think the next year we were in Arizona and we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And you were like, as long as it doesn't involve getting naked, I'm in. And then you said, actually, you know what? I'm okay if we need to do it. And Valerie was like, okay, let's do it now. We are out hiking. And we look over and Valerie's got her shirt off. And we were like, and then as soon as a second person does that, the rest of you are toast. And I think Krista was second, and that's when you're Krista. And I think that was when I was like, oh, we're doing this, So now we've got so many stories though. And then I think it was one year I showed up and I was wearing red high heels for one event.
That was so cool.
And somebody else was like, I want red shoes. And it was like, okay, next year we should all have red shoes and wear them. And so we almost every
And
year
then you
have
guys
worn
forgot,
red shoes.
and so I texted, and I texted you a picture of my red shoes, and I was like, "Have you guys gotten your red shoes?"
And
We
everyone
even got red shoes on the trip to make
On
sure
the
we all had
trip.
those red shoes.
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, so those are like some fun rituals that have happened that we didn't like on the first year get together and be like,
Right.
once every time we're gonna wear red shoes and we're gonna get naked and we're like, but it's fun to like have we have rituals. We have like we've got a thing.
One time in Vegas, Palm Springs, I remember we were at dinner, and organically I was just like, for next time we should all do something outside our comfort zone, and when we get back we should share about that.
So the sharing question was, we all went around the circle and shared what we would do.
And the funny thing
you-
is, my idea, and I couldn't think of anything. You guys all had something that you wanted to do, and I was like, I couldn't think of anything, and yet it changed my life when
Yes.
we figured it out.
Yes. And we should just say though, her thing was wanting to do stand-up comedy, and she ended up joining an improv class
Still.
that was like not convenient, but you were like, I said I was gonna do this, I'm gonna do
I
this,
have to
and you
show
did not
me.
want to do it. This girl now does improv comedy all the time, and was it next year or the fall? 2 years later, we ended up planning girls' trip to go and be able to watch you perform
Yeah.
live because
Yeah.
like that was like yeah.
cool.
That was, yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
It was totally organic and yet life-changing.
Yeah,
And
we've had a lot of that.
There you
So, well, that's probably enough for this video, don't you think? But if you think we all are convinced that we want to be here, the answer is yes.